Good morning. I'm just going to be honest, as I should always be. As that song was wrapping up, and I grabbed my computer. Actually, it's my wife's, but it doesn't matter. And my water and my phone and everything else, and started walking up. I thought about just walking out the door. You just don't understand. It's emotional. And I thought that, today was going to be easy. But it's not. Even, this morning coming in and they call me the jokester. So, and it's just so many things that this service really means. And I came in with, how I was going to come and do all this, and in the reality, Brian's welcome and Chris's communion and the songs, they pretty much preached my sermon. They did it. There's no reason for me to really say anything. And, I thought about it. Let's just pray first. That's all I can do right now. God, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this time. You can interchange words, Easter, resurrection, but it is the risen. Jesus, you have risen. And I pray that today, that no matter what, that I pray that whatever needs to be said and what needs to be taken out, we say this all the time when someone comes up and preaches. But Father, I think today just the focus is on you. Jesus, the focus is on you. And I pray that we could walk out of here remembering that today is a new day. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. So it's everything that I thought, everything I felt, everything that was going on, and I'm like, oh, it's hot in here. Let me turn down, the heat, put the air on. I'm poking Brian. He said, why are you poking me in the middle of service? I'm like, is it hot in here? What's going on? And I'm turning down the heat, putting the air on a little bit, and I'm thinking, and I guess, I mean, make a point where, Anthony, he was like, hey, you good? You all right? He said, you got this. And I've never felt butterflies, except when I was in sports or anything else, but I never felt the way I felt today. I was like, I really, 2 times, literally, if you saw me walk the first time, I literally was thinking about let me just go. And Brian or somebody, I'm not feeling well. It's on you, bro. Do something. And I felt that. There are so many things that are going on in the world today. And it's not easy to focus on what is needed to be focused on. So this morning, I kind of wrote out real fast a couple of things that I'm feeling and thinking and how we can be distracted. We can miss the important things around us or the things that we are looking for. Last week was a busy week, running around, doing everything. And just with life in general, with family and health. God knows I got a lot of health issues going on right now. My knees, used to make the cracking noise getting up. It made some different noise this morning that I wasn't used to hearing. My shoulder, my neck, my back, it's like I'm broken. Some of y'all can relate to that. Y'all don't have to admit it, but you can relate to it. I don't care what they say, but it's funny. My birthday passed in April 4th, and I kept saying I thought I was 52. I don't tell my wife. She says, what are you talking about? I was like, 52 comes hard. She goes, no, babe, no. No, you're 54. I was like, what? I was like, no, I can't be. She goes, no, you're 54. You don't understand. Like, you're born in 71. This is 2025. Remember, I'm a year older than you. I was like, wow. Then everything started to feel bad at that point. Dealing with work. Dealing with people, trying to avoid people. Work. I kept finding myself being distracted. And at first, I was excited to speak this Easter Sunday. You know, it's me. I'm Sam Dowling. I'm going to do this. And that's why I always say to myself, to get myself hyped up, you Sam Dowling. I had everything planned. I was going to go ahead and do a sight and sound presentation. It was going to be bootleg, but it was going to be a sight and sound. I got my props and everything. I was going in the basement, grabbing everything. I said, I'm going to bring everything up. I don't care what nobody say. I'm going to bring my little wagon up here, and I was going to make it happen. It was going to be bootleg. I couldn't find the time to really focus on the message. And as life went on and things happened, I started to worry. I said, you know, I need to dedicate this time to do this message. And I started to worry, and I had a message planned. It was already done. And in fact, the problem was that I had the message. I had the message. And then as I started to share what I thought was a good message, I shared just a little bit with my wife. She's like, nah, don't say that. I shared with my mother, and she said, oh no, Jay, please don't. Please don't. I shared with my best friend Ken, and he's like, if you want to go that way. And everything started to come out. I was like, whoa, what's wrong? And then Mr. Fletcher called the other day. Because I had a song I wanted to play at the end. I wanted everybody to get hyped, to get ready for it. He's like, no. And he told me why. Because of the artists and different things, and I was unaware. I was like, oh, okay. So I don't want people to feel a certain way. And it made me think. Everyone said no in their own way. Everyone say, don't do it this way. Don't do it that way. And I started to sit back and think, and I prayed. I said, you know, God, let me pray more. What's going on? What's being shown to me? What do I need to do? What needs to be said today? And I looked at the first message, and I started to feel that God was telling me through people and through situations over the weeks, your message was trash. Maybe God didn't say it like that. Maybe he said something like, it needs a little bit of work. So I really don't have a title for this message because literally this is something that just came about. And if I had to give a title to this message, it would be, what do you see inside the tomb? What do you see inside the tomb? Last week, Barnabas was here, and he talked about the pearl of great value. What we should do with this pearl of great value that we should seek after is surrender all. Surrender your family, surrender your car, surrender your house. Give it all up. And when you give it all up and you really surrender, God gives that back to you. He gives you back that house. He gives you back that car. He gives you back that job that you wanted or that you have and you continue to work for it as is for the Lord. He gives you back your spouse. The kids was something that I said, can we negotiate? I thought about that. I want my wife back. But the kids, we need to negotiate that. It was okay. You can have them. But they're with the Lord. Yeah, I'm giving them to the Lord. So what I want to do at this time is that I want to try to take you back. I want to try to look at certain things. Because there's times in our lives that we only get one chance, one shot. Like the moment in basketball, everybody's looking at basketball and you got to make that winning shot, the clock is running down, and then you're there and there's a pressure in the air and you hold your breath and you just go for it. Or you get that one opportunity, that one chance to get on that knee and ask that woman, would you be my wife? And you hope she says yes. One chance. Now I knew Angel was going to say yes. Because why? Because I'm saying down. That's how I hype myself up. To believe the impossible could be possible. How could she resist this charm? This Easter morning, I feel like I have one chance to convey a message that will stick. The pressure is intense. Now, if I black out or ramble too much or even put some of you to sleep, I want you to walk away with this one message. Jesus died for you. So if I go off track or anything else, just remember that. Jesus died for you. Because when you meet Jesus, he will turn your life upside down. What I'd like to do today is to attempt to take us back. I want you to follow me as I bring you to a point in time and try to paint a picture. What was going on during that time? When you think of the word empty, what do you think about? What comes to your mind? According to the dictionary, we understand the word empty to mean vacant, unoccupied, uninhabited, unattended, clear, free, bare, desolate, deserted, abandoned, containing nothing without content, unfilled, not filled, void. It also says meaningless, aimless, worthless, useless, idle, vain. When you start to think about it, we can come up with all negative concepts of empty. For example, it's not good for a scuba diver to be underwater with an empty tank. It's not good to make that travel across country with no gas. I stand here today, empty pockets. It's not good. But when we think of empty, we think of these things. But when it comes to the tomb, that's supposed to be full, containing a dead body of a man who claimed to be the Messiah, the Son of the living God, it's a great thing. That's empty. It's a great thing. What I want to do is I want to take you to the point of where Jesus was in front of Pilate. One of the lines from Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, Pilate was discussing with his wife what he was telling Jesus in that trial. And what he asked Jesus, he said, what is truth? Pilate's wife looked at him and said, if you cannot see truth when it's in front of you, then no one can tell you what it is. Pilate could recognize truth. He saw it. Hold on, I'm trying to keep moving this. He knew Jesus was not guilty of all the accusations brought by the religious Pharisees. He was totally innocent. To his shame, Pilate gave in to peer pressure. The pressure was too much to choose truth. When it came time for Pilate to stand up for truth, he failed. Truth was thrown out the window. Gone. He was afraid. This was not the first time that Jesus was before Pilate. Jesus went through 6 trials in 6 hours. 3 of those trials were of a civil nature. All 6 were legal. The other 3 were of a religious nature. His first trial started around 12:30 a.m. before a former high priest. And the accusation was a pre-trial, trumped up allegations. That was a trial to be told. That started the whole chain. Jesus had 3 trials before he was before Pilate the first time. And that was around 5 a.m., the hall of judgment. And he was accused at that point for treason. He sent Jesus to Herod. That was the 5th trial. Herod mocked him and gave Jesus a robe. And he sent him back to Pilate. And this is the trial that most of you are familiar with. 6 hours and 6 illegal trials. Pilate says 6 times that Jesus is innocent. In John 18, verse 39 to 40, he says, "But you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you wish that I release for you the King of the Jews?" So they cried out again, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now, mind you, Barabbas was a robber. All this was going on. While all this was going on, do you know none of the disciples were at any of the trials? None of the disciples attended. When Jesus came out after his sentencing, there was Peter standing nearby. And that's where you know when he denied Christ 3 times. Just like Jesus said he would, all the disciples fled. Now I'm going to try to summarize this ordeal so you can understand what Jesus went through and why we're here today. During his 6th trial, his last trial, before he was nailed to the cross, Jesus was beaten. It was this condition that Jesus faced the first physical abuse. Punches and slaps to the face and his head while blindfolded. Unable to anticipate the blows, Jesus was badly bruised. His mouth and eyes injured. The psychological effects of the false trials should not be underestimated, considering that Jesus faced them bruised, dehydrated, exhausted, and probably in shock. Then he was flogged. And for many of us, we know what that is. But for those who don't, bear with me. In the previous 12 hours, Jesus had suffered emotional trauma. Rejection by his closest friends, a cruel beating, and a sleepless night during which he had to walk miles between unjust hearings. He was in no way prepared for the punishment of flogging. The effect would be worse as a result. A man to be flogged was stripped of his clothes and his hands tied to a post above his head. He was then whipped across the shoulders, the back, the buttocks, thighs, and legs. The soldier standing behind and to one side of the victim. The whip used, the flagellum, was designed to make this a devastating punishment, bringing the victim close to death. Several short, heavy leather thongs with 2 small balls of lead or iron attached near the end of each. Pieces of sheep's bone were sometimes included into the straps. As the whipping proceeded, the heavy leather thongs produced first superficial cuts, then deep damage to underlying tissues. Bleeding becomes severe when veins are cut and arteries are cut as well. The small metal balls first produce large, deep bruises, which are broken open by further blows over and over and over again. The fragments of sheep's bone rip the flesh as the whip is being drawn back and pulling back, slapping it hard and pulling back. When the beating is finished, the skin of the back is in ribbons and the entire area torn and bleeding. Muscles, bone, everything is visible. And that wasn't it. Then it became the crucifixion. The wooden cross used by the Romans was too heavy to be carried by one man. Instead, the victim to be crucified was made to bear the detached crossbar across his shoulders, carrying it outside the city walls to the place of the execution. It weighed about 75 to 125 pounds. He collapsed under the burden of carrying it after he was beaten, whipped, flogged, mocked. Let's not forget that. Toyed around. Someone else had to carry that crossbeam. He was offered myrrh, as was mentioned earlier, but he refused. Thrown down on his back with arms outstretched along the crossbar, nails were driven through Jesus' wrist into the wood. These iron spikes, about 6 inches long and 3/8 inch thick, cut the large sensory motor median nerve, causing excruciating pain in both arms. Carefully placed between bones and ligament, they were able to bear the full weight of the crucified man. In preparation for the nailing of the feet, Jesus was lifted up and the crossbar fixed to the upright post. Then the legs bent at the knee and the nail was driven through each ankle into the cross. Again, there was severe nerve damage and the pain caused was probably intense. It is important to note that, however, neither the wounds from the wrist or the feet caused substantial bleeding because, as Brian mentioned, the executioner took care to ensure this. They perfected this. They knew exactly what they were doing. Now, nailed to the cross, this is where the real horror begins, if you didn't think that it was worse then. When the wrists were nailed to the crossbar, the elbows were intentionally left in a bent position so that the crucified man would have to hang with his arms above his head. The weight being taken on the nails in the wrist, obviously this was unbearable pain, but it had another effect. It was very difficult to exhale in this position. In order to breathe out and then take in fresh air, it was necessary to push the body up on the nailed feet, causing more pain. And then as you couldn't bear the pain, you slumped back down again. And that cycle repeated over and over again. The pushing up, pulling up to get your breath, to drop down, and to keep pulling up. The pain. A terrible cycle of pain began. Hanging by the arms, unable to breathe, pushing up on the feet to inhale quickly before it again slumping down, going on and on and on again. How long can you last? This activity was torture. The scraping of his back over and over again, feeling the pain. But you know, they say that the factor contributing to Jesus' death, a combination of shock and suffocation, killed most victims of the crucifixion. But in Jesus' case, they believe an acute heart failure may have been the final trauma because everything he's went through, from praying in the garden, sweat like blood, going through the mocking, going through miles and miles of travel through trials that were unjust. And he bared all that. For who? For us. But then the spear they shoved in his side to make it complete. And from the wound came a flow of blood and water. In less than 12 hours from the time of his arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus was crucified. The only disciple that was there was John, who comforted Jesus' mother during his crucifixion. Can you imagine the crowd watching Jesus being beaten, whipped, and crucified to the cross? Every person that saw that, the blood, heard the screams, thought it was over. Jesus was killed. The supposed Son of God is dead. All hope will be buried and locked in that tomb they laid him in. That day that Jesus died on the cross, it seemed like the hopes and dreams of his disciples were crushed. Their teacher had been killed. Judas was one of them. But he betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And now he was dead. He committed suicide. The crowds that once flocked to Jesus and followed him everywhere he went were no longer around. The events of the last few days had to be traumatic for Jesus and trying for the disciples. They had scattered and went into hiding. And yet on this day of the week following his death, the beginning, word began to circulate around the faithful few that a certain woman had gone to Jesus' tomb and found the stone rolled away, an empty tomb, and the burial clothes laying on the floor. You have to imagine the scene. If we could turn to Matthew 28, verse 1. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary arrived at the tomb. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Look into the tomb. What do you see? Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." God turns even death itself upside down. The empty tomb of Jesus holds great promises for us. An empty tomb promises to comfort us with hope of being with the Lord. In John 13, 31 and 35, Jesus tells his disciples that he will be leaving them soon. You can imagine how this troubled them. But he comforted them with these words in John 14:3. "I go and prepare a place for you. I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also." Jesus knew this. He was still comforting people. In his letter to the Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians 4, 16, 18, Paul urged them to comfort one another with the hope of what? The resurrection of the dead and the ascension of the living to meet Jesus in the air. Even today, it brings us great comfort that the promise of the resurrection brings because the empty tomb. Because of the empty tomb. You see, God is our protector. If y'all didn't know that, let me tell you, God is our protector. But yet many are willing to trade his protection for something else. Some trade Christ for job security, for wealth, popularity, or just to have fun. People are trading Jesus who can give them everything, for something that will pass away. That car, that house, that designer bag, those clothing, they all will pass away. Best believe they will pass away. Christ is the greatest gift of all. I want to give you that message. Christ is the greatest gift of all. He is the pearl of great value that we should be looking for. But many of us are missing out. There are many people who have encountered Jesus, but never let Jesus change them. Judas encountered Jesus, but he was willing to trade Christ for 3 pieces of silver. What would you trade him for? What would you trade him for? You know, they say that everyone has a price. For $1 million, would you do this? For $10, would you do this? Oh, no, I won't do that. But for $1 million? What would you trade Jesus for? What's your price? Today is a day of life. It's a new beginning. We've walked through death. We've stood at the cross as Jesus died. But now we're standing at the empty tomb. What do you see inside that tomb? That's a question for you. A tomb is where we expected to see tears, loss, and grief. But we find hope in life. That's what I see when I see the tomb. No matter what looks dead in your life, I want you to remember this. It ain't over until God says so. It ain't over. And for all my English teachers, I'm sorry for using ain't. It is not over. The angel said, he is not here. He has risen. What are you looking for? He is risen, just as Jesus said he would. It looked like Jesus was dead. It looked like everything fell apart. It looked like everything was gone. It looked like there would be no good news, no gospel to proclaim. But that wasn't the case. The people in the crowd encountered Christ. But spiritually, they were not changed. They saw Christ, they experienced his power, yet refused to follow him. He was not what they expected. They were expecting a warrior king to come deliver them. He was not what they expected. You will be surprised today how many people have encountered Christ, but remain spiritually unchanged. They saw Christ, they experienced his power, yet refused to follow him. We can put ourselves right there, and we could park it. Mary stood outside the tomb weeping. She was sad, in despair. She felt hopeless, helpless, discouraged, confused, and afraid. We can relate to that. Many times of our lives, a loss of a loved one, a father, mother, grandmother, grandfather, child, friends. We can relate to that. And as she wept, she stood down and looked into the tomb. And she saw 2 angels in white sitting, one at the head and the other at the foot or the feet where Jesus laid. Then they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Ask yourself, why are you weeping? What's going on in your life? Why are you in despair? Why are you weeping?" See, they already understood what happened, the angels. The importance of the empty tomb. But Mary was dealing with her own emotions. Sometimes our emotions can get in our way. They can mess everything up. She remembered how the Roman soldiers enjoyed whipping him, punishing him, brutalizing him, mocking him, and humiliating Jesus publicly. And she felt that they had desecrated the grave and stole his body and hid it, or even worse. So she said to them, "Because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." She and the disciples have forgotten one thing. Jesus promised that he would rise again on the 3rd day. See, when we're caught in our emotions, we forget all reason. We forget what was told to us. Because we're so consumed with ourselves or the situation that we're in that we forget that God will take care of everything. Maybe not the way you want it, but he'll take care of it. He'll take care of it. In Luke 24:5-8 states, the angels asked, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he spoke to you when he was still in Galilee, saying, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified. And the third day rise again." And they remembered his words. We would like to believe that we can handle every situation. We would like to believe that we are prepared for every situation. In my line of work, I prepare for death. And you may say, bro, really? Seriously? Because we go through intense training and my firearm and tactical and everything else, and I'm looking, okay, I know if I get shot, if something happens to me, I have something to live for. That's my family. We're Jesus' family. That's why he died for us. I'm not going to die on that cold ground. I'm going to think of my wife, my kids. I'm going to think of I have something to live for. And we think about this all the time. How to prepare, how to stuff that wound, how to pack it in with the gauze that we have to keep alive, how to put that patch over my side and my back if my lung collapses. We have to take care of ourselves, tie our arms behind our back, and simulate you've been shot and put your own tourniquet on with one hand while you're still taking fire from the enemy. Jesus knew that. He told them, I must go through this. I will be crucified, but I will rise on the third day. But we forget that. John 20, verse 14 to 17, they asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? They have taken my Lord away." She said, "And I don't know where they put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she said, not realizing that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking that he was the gardener. She said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me, where have you put him? And I will get him." Jesus said to Mary, or said to her, "Mary." He had to say her name. Once he said her name, he said she turned toward him and cried out, "My teacher, my master, my Lord." She went from a state of not knowing what happened to Jesus, from being afraid, discouraged, hopeless, helpless, sad. She was so into her emotions, she could not see the very person she was looking for was right there in front of her. He had to call her by name, Mary, to finally see, to be focused. Her outlook changed. Her outlook changed. Her disposition changed. Her fear was taken away. Her sadness turned to joy because of what? The empty tomb. The empty tomb has the power to change your life. The empty tomb has the power to give us hope. The empty tomb has the power to change the world. Because of the empty tomb, our lives can be full of hope and full of joy. They didn't say it would be easy. They didn't say everything will go away. It gives you hope. It gives you joy. Full of strength and full of purpose. I'm not going to die on that cold ground. What's my purpose? To live. What's your purpose? What's your purpose? The empty tomb has the power to change your life. The empty tomb has the power to give us hope. Because of the empty tomb, our lives can be full of hope and full of joy. It's so easy to let everyday struggles, the grind of life, to get us down. It makes you exhausted. Trust me, I know. I have a lot. I want you to look at this. In our faith and hope, we can do many things. If our faith and hope is dependent on how our worldly life goes, then we might as well continue to live like Jesus still in the tomb. If your faith and hope is dependent on your worldly life, we might as well just continue thinking Jesus is in the tomb. Your joy should not be based on your wealth, your status, success, or health. I'm just going to have to get used to hearing a different knocking on my knees and add that to the list. Make more appointments to the doctor. If you are sad, discouraged, depressed, confused, scared, you feel hopeless, you feel helpless, you feel useless, desecrated, abused, unloved, or even lonely and lost, you don't have to live that way. You don't. Because even as the jokester, per se, and even when we were told to stand up and shake the person's hand, whatever, I'm jostling around with Anthony and everything else and not shaking his hand, shaking his hand, not shaking his hand, shaking his hand, or shaking it, not shaking it, going back and forth. He got frustrated. He's like, man, I don't want to shake your hand. But, this even touches my heart when I even say this. Even with all that, Anthony knew I was struggling. I don't know what it is about you, Anthony. I really don't. But he knew I was struggling this morning. And he still hugged me. And he encouraged me. I don't know what it is about you, Anthony. But it really made me feel like, I don't know what it made me feel like. But it moved me because despite my joking or whatever, or how I am, Anthony accepted me still. And he was able to see past all that and still say, hey, you got this, bro. I can feel like something's wrong. He didn't just touch me once. He touched me a couple of times before I came up. And that's what Jesus does to us. Not saying Anthony's Jesus. Don't want you to get that confused. But when we're struggling or we're going through what we're going through, Jesus is touching us, saying it's okay. When we just acted a fool, Jesus is still saying, I got you. You're good. He touches us. If you feel like you're in a hopeless situation, let me help you with this. A hopeless situation does not mean that God has left you. Just because things don't work out exactly how you planned them does not mean that God is not working in your life. No matter what situation you're saying, I can tell you that God is at work in your life at the moment. Your situation didn't take God by surprise. God knows your struggles. When you're at this moment in your life, God knew. It might have taken you by surprise, but it didn't take God by surprise. God knows everything about everything. He's all-knowing. He loves you, and cares for each and every one of us. Your jacked up situation didn't catch God by surprise. Don't think that you're different. Don't think you're different. In Psalms 139, 1-8, this is the New Century Version. It reminds us, Lord, you have examined me and know all about me. You know when I sit down and when I get up. You know my thoughts before I think them. You know where I go and where I lie down. You know everything I do. Lord, even before I say a word, you already know it. You are all around me, in front of me, in back of me. Your knowledge is amazing to me. It is more than I can understand. Where can I go to get away from your spirit? Where can I run from you? I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I lie down in the grave, you are there. Your miracle is already set in motion, church. Even before your battle began, God set your miracle in motion. Think about that thought just for a moment. Even before your battle began, God set your miracle in motion. God's not caught off guard. And God knew you were going to need a miracle before you even knew you had a problem. Look at Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. God is good. He's faithful. He's merciful. Just, loving, kind, provider, a waymaker, a deliverer, and most of all, he's a healer. As I wrap up this morning, we were able to go back and get a glimpse of the trials of Jesus, his torture, his death. You also witnessed the empty tomb and what it means. What does it mean for you? Now I want to revisit the question I started. What are you going to do with Jesus? He's been crucified, defeated the power of sin and death, and welcomed us to his empty tomb to see ourselves, to look at what it means. You have two simple options: accept it or reject it. There's no middle ground. So what's your choice today? Will you invite Jesus to be Lord of your life, or will you reject him? What do you see in the tomb? Amen.